Tears threaten to spill over as I feel the sting of the stick on my back, over and over, just like clockwork. But I won't give him the satisfaction of seeing me cry. This is not uncommon. My father beats me almost daily, and if he doesn't beat me, he screams and curses at me. 90% of the children in the Central African Republic experience some form of domestic abuse. Although I love my country, it faces many problems, including child abuse, poverty, and poor education, which accumulate to create the predominant problem: lack of a safe, stable environment for children to grow up in. Hi, I'm Zakia Mandaba. I'm 13 years old and I live with my sister, Zia, my mother, and my father. I'm from Bimbo, a town in the Central African Republic. Because of the state of extreme poverty my family is in, I'm forced to work so we can buy enough food to survive. I wear African print wraparound skirts with Western shirts. I live in a rundown, fired mud brick home. Housing in forests and villages is more varied. My country is also home to jungles and beautiful exotic animals. However, my favorite part of my home is the Ubangi River. It runs right near my house. It's my hideaway spot. I like to lie in the shade and listen to the sounds of the forest. I read this book back when I was still in school about our history. Apparently, slave traders arrived here in the 1850s with weapons. We were colonized in the 1880s by France. In 1960, the Prime Minister, David Dacko, led us to independence. Around 1965, Jean Bedel Bokassa overthrew Dacko. During his reign, the Central African Republic was referred to as the Central African Empire. He even arranged a coronation ceremony for himself in 1977, depleting the nation's annual income by over a quarter for its lavish celebration. Francois Bozize became president in 2005. In 2013, when I was only 4, Seleka rebels overthrew him, and the bloodbath began. My late grandmother told me the conflict forced around 168,000 families to flee their homes. Hundreds of schools were left non-operational as a result of fighting, leaving more than half of children, including myself, out of school and even more vulnerable to exploitation and violence. I read in the United Nations Secretary General 2019 report that at least 96 children as young as 6 months old were recorded as killed or maimed by an armed group throughout the year, with further child casualties resulting mainly from shootings. Since the armed conflict started in 2012, the UN reported that more than 14,000 children have been recruited by Seleka and anti-Balaka armies, along with a number of other armed groups. In February 2019, a peace treaty was signed between the government and 14 armed groups, though the situation remains precarious. The combined effects ended up with over 3.1 million people in need of help. Big help. Poverty is another huge problem and contributing factor, with 71% of the population living below the international poverty line. The Central African Republic is one of the poorest countries in the world. In addition to poverty, there's also government corruption and fraud. In the 2020 presidential election, Touadera won 53% of votes, but he also sent armed militias to large towns, preventing hundreds of thousands of people from voting. I know because the town next door was targeted. We're surrounded by people with the same problems, without any way out, without a view of a different life. It's impossible to pull ourselves out. For example, how are children supposed to see a different world when 65% of women think it's okay for their husbands to beat them? I think a 3-pronged approach to solving these problems would be best. Women and children need better education because education is what we need to be able to see a different future. When the world is so male-dominated, women and children, the primary victims, need a support system and need to be able to see a better, different world. Without education and support, even trying to picture that is scary. We also need improved law enforcement. In theory, the laws in the Central African Republic should make safe, stable environments. But without effective law enforcement, these laws are useless. No serious crimes have been prosecuted since 2013. Sexual violence is illegal, yet not uncommon because the government fails to prosecute. National law also criminalizes parental abuse of children younger than 15, yet 90% of children experience domestic abuse like me. The principal problem in the Central African Republic is the lack of a safe, stable environment for children to grow up in as a result of the many problems including government, fraud, poverty, and poor education. So why is that your problem? Because every day technology pulls the world closer and closer together, and what happens in one country starts to become another country's problem.